Chapter 25. Our shoes thudded over the concrete basement floor. I struggled to keep at Alex's side. My legs felt so heavy as if I were running uphill. "Whoa!" I cried out when the lights flashed on. Startled, we both stopped running. I blinked hard, waiting for my eyes to adjust to the bright ceiling light. We both turned to the far wall to see the Blob Monster, and stared at a pale white hand slapping against the wall beneath the open basement window. A hand? It's a rubber glove, Alex exclaimed. It's one of Dad's gardening gloves, I choked out. Dad usually leaves his heavy gardening gloves on that window ledge. One of the gloves was hanging from a nail, and the wind kept slapping it against the wall. Alex laughed first, then I joined in. It felt good to laugh, and it felt especially good to know that no blob monster was hiding in the basement. What a relief. Alex and I climbed happily up the stairs. Then she made her way to the front door. "Thanks for the entertainment," she teased. "It was better than a movie. See you tomorrow." She started out the door, then turned back. "We definitely got a little crazy tonight, Zachy. I mean, about that old typewriter." "Yeah, I guess," I admitted. "It doesn't have any special powers. It didn't make a blob monster appear in the basement. And all the lights came back on without me having to type that they came on." "The typewriter didn't cause anything to happen tonight. It was all coincidence," Alex said. "Ooh, big word," I teased her. She slammed the door behind her. "Are you doing anything, Zachy?" Mom asked. "Not really." It was Saturday afternoon. I was just hanging out. I had a ton of homework to do, so I was laying on the couch staring up at the ceiling, thinking up excuses not to do it. "Can you run to the store for me?" Mom asked. "The Enderbys are coming for dinner, and I need a few things. It's a short list." She held up a slip of paper. "No problem," I said, climbing up from the couch. Maybe I can add a few items to the list, I thought, taking it from her hand. Like maybe a few candy bars or a box of Pop-Tarts. I love to eat Pop-Tarts raw. "Ride your bike, okay?" Mom asked. "I'm kind of in a hurry. Come straight back, okay?" "No problem," I repeated. I tucked the list into the back pocket of my jeans and headed to the garage to get my bike. The afternoon sun poured down. The air felt hot and dry, more like summer than spring. I jumped onto my bike and pedaled down the driveway standing up. I turned toward town and sat down, pedaling fast, riding no hands. A few minutes later, I leaned my bike against the brick wall of Jack's. Jack's is mainly a meat market, but they sell fruit and vegetables and other groceries too. The bell over the glass door clanged as I stepped inside. Miss Jack was at her usual spot, leaning her elbows on the counter beside the cash register. Miss Jack is a big, platinum-haired woman with about a dozen chins. She wears bright red lipstick and long, dangling earrings. She is really nice to everyone, except kids. She hates kids. I guess she thinks we only come into the store to steal. When a kid comes in, she follows him up and down the aisles and never takes her eyes off him. I closed the door behind me and reached into my back pocket for my shopping list. Miss Jack had the newspaper spread out in front of her on the counter. She raised her eyes slowly and made a disgusted face at me. "Help you?" she muttered. I waved the list. "Just buying a few things for my mom." She grabbed the list out of my hand, squinted at it. Then she handed it back with a grunt. "Tuna is in the back, on the bottom." "Thanks." I picked up a shopping basket and hurried to the back of the store. A big air conditioner rattled against the wall. A fan in front of it blew cold air down the narrow aisle. I found the tuna quickly and dropped 2 cans into my basket. The long white display counter of the meat department stretched in front of me. Behind the glass, cuts of red meat were lined up in perfect rows. Behind the counter, an enormous side of beef hung from the ceiling. That is really gross, I thought. It looked like an entire cow, stripped of its hide, hanging upside down. Yuck. I started to turn away from it when the dead cow moved. It swung to the right, then swung back. I stared in surprise. The cow swung further, to the right, then back. I watched it swinging on its rope, swinging heavily from side to side, and then I heard a harsh, whispered voice. "Fresh meat! Fresh meat!" Chapter 26. A low moan escaped my throat as I gaped at the side of beef, swinging so slowly, back and forth, back and forth. "Fresh meat," came the raspy whisper again. "Fresh meat." "No," I blurted out. I dropped my shopping basket and started to step back. I let out another cry as Adam stood up and stepped out from behind the meat counter. He had a gleeful grin on his face. "Fresh meat," he whispered, and then bust out laughing. Annie and Emmy climbed out from behind the counter, giggling and shaking their heads. "Awesome! Zachy, you're bright red," Annie exclaimed. Her sister laughed. My face burned as hot as the sun. I felt so embarrassed. How could I fall for such a dumb joke? Now I knew they would tell everyone in school that I freaked out over a side of beef. "What are you doing here?" I shrieked. "We saw you on your bike. We followed you into the store. Didn't you see us? We were right behind you." I let out a furious cry and balled my hands into my fists. "What's going on back there? What are you kids doing?" Miss Jack's harsh voice rattled the shelves. "Nothing," I called. I found the tuna." I turned back to Adam and the twins. "Give me a break," I muttered. For some reason, that struck them funny. They giggled and slapped one another high fives. Then Adam stuck out both arms. He held them stiffly in front of him like a sleepwalker and began marching stiff-legged across the aisle towards me. "You're controlling me, Zachy," he declared in a machine-like voice. "I'm in your power." He staggered towards me like some kind of zombie. "Your typewriter controls me, Zachy. Your typewriter has the power. I am your slave." "Adam, you're not funny," I cried. The girls giggled. They closed their eyes, stuck out their arms, and started marching towards me too. "We're in your power," Emmy chanted. "You're controlling our every move," Annie said. "This isn't funny," I shouted furiously. "Get lost, you guys. I turned and saw Miss Jack bouncing towards us. Her face as red as her lipstick. "What are you doing back here?" she bellowed. "This isn't a clubhouse." Adam and the girls instantly lowered their sleepwalker arms. Annie and Emmy backed up against the meat counter. "Are you buying anything?" Miss Jack demanded, huffing and puffing from her long journey from the cash register. "If you're not buying anything, get out. Go to the playground." "We're going," Adam murmured. He couldn't get past Miss Jack. She filled the aisle, so he scooted down the next aisle. Annie and Emmy hurried after him. Miss Jack glared at me. I'm almost finished," I stammered. I picked up the basket. I searched for my list, but couldn't find it. It wasn't a problem, though. I remembered what was on it. I found the other items and dropped them into the basket. Miss Jack stayed with me the whole while. Then she walked me to the front of the store. I paid and hurried out. I was so angry at Adam and the girls, I forgot all about the candy bars. They're always making fun of me, I griped to myself. Always playing mean tricks, always trying to make me look like a jerk. Always, always, and I'm sick of it. I am sick to death of it. Sick, 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 I chanted the word all the way home. I hopped off my bike and let it crash to the driveway. Then I ran inside and tossed the grocery bag onto the counter. Sick, sick, sick. I'm totally gonna lose it if I don't cool down, I decided. I ran up to my room and shoved a fresh sheet of paper into the old typewriter. Then I plopped into the desk chair and furiously started typing. A third Blob Monster story, the scariest one of all. I typed as fast as I could. I didn't think about it. I let my anger do the thinking. I didn't write it out first. I didn't plan it. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I leaned over the old typewriter and typed. In the story, the ugly pink blob monster attacks the whole town. People are screaming, running in every direction, running for their lives. 2 police officers step forward to fight the blob monster off. It opens its huge mouth and swallows them whole. Shrieks of terror fill the town. The enormous blob monster is eating everyone alive. Yes, I cried out loud. Yes! I was paying everyone back, paying the whole town back. Yes! It was the most exciting, most terrifying story I ever wrote. I wrote page after page. Zachy, you forgot something, a voice called. I started to type those words into the story. Then I recognized Mom's voice. Breathing hard, I spun away from the typewriter. I found Mom leaning in the doorway, shaking her head fretfully. You have to go back to the store, she said. You forgot the loaf of Italian bread. We need bread for dinner tonight. Oh, sorry, I replied. I glanced back at my story and sighed. It was going so well. I was having such a good time. I'll get right back to it after I go to the store, I decided. I took more money from Mom, then I picked up my bike from the driveway. I thought about my Blob Monster story as I pedaled to town. It's the best story I ever wrote, I decided. I can't wait to read it to Alex. I heard the thud of footsteps on the sidewalk. A man in a business suit came running by. A dark blur, he ran so fast I couldn't see his face. What's his problem? I wondered. He's too dressed up to be jogging. I had to swerve to the curb as a blue station wagon roared towards me. The woman at the wheel honked her horn and waved frantically to me. Her tires squealed as she shot around the corner. Everyone is in such a hurry today, I muttered to myself. Then I heard a scream. A man's scream. I pedaled faster. I was a block from town. I could see the awning over the doorway of Jack's Grocery on the corner. I saw 2 people running past the store, running at top speed, waving their hands. I screeched to a halt when I heard another scream. Look out! Someone shrieked. Run! Call the police! 2 little kids ran past me. One of them was crying. Hey, what's going on? I called to them. But they kept running. They didn't answer. I started pedaling again, standing up. I leaned over my handlebars trying to see what all the fuss was about. As I reached town, I saw people running down the center of the street. Cars honked. People were screaming. Hey, what's going on? I called. Is there a fire or something? Hey, someone tell me what's happening. Somebody... And then I saw what was happening. And I opened my mouth in a shrill scream of horror and fell off my bike. Chapter 27. Ow! I landed hard on my right side. The bike slammed on top of me. The handlebar jabbed me in the neck. A man ran past. Get away, kid! Hurry, get away! He shouted. I shoved the bike off me and climbed to my feet. My heart pounding in my chest, I brushed myself off and gaped at the enormous pink blob monster throbbing on the next corner. Oh, A horrified moan escaped my throat. It looks just as I described it in my story, I realized. Like a huge, slimy human heart, pink and wet with tiny black eyes, and purple veins knotted on the top of its head, and a mouth cut into its belly. Throbbing, throbbing. It's my monster, I cried. Two little girls frowned at me as their mother tugged them away. I recognized her. It was Miss Willow, who lives across the street. Zachy, run, she cried, pulling each girl by hand. It's a horrible monster. I know, I murmured. She pulled her daughters across the street, but I didn't follow them. I took a deep breath and made my way slowly down the street towards the throbbing blob monster. I wrote this, I realized. Just before I came to town, I typed this scene. I wrote that the blob monster attacked the town, and I'll bet I know what happens next. As I stepped closer, I saw the trail of thick slime the monster left behind it. Its belly pulled open, and I saw its purple tongue darting from side to side. My legs trembled as I stepped even closer. People screamed and ran. Cars and vans roared past, horns honking. Everyone was running, desperate to escape. But I couldn't leave. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. I made you, I thought. Horrified, curious, and amazed, all at the same time. I created you. I wrote this story. The blob monster stared back at me through its tiny black eyes. Did it know who I was? Did it know that I created it? As I stared in amazement, its mouth opened wider. It made sick, sucking sounds, and the purple tongue scraped the side of its mouth. Thick, yellow drool poured out of the open mouth, and the blob monster bounced forward. Its purple tongue leaped out at me. Hey, I cried out. I struggled to back away. The hot, sticky tongue wrapped around my leg, started to pull me towards the slimy open mouth. Let go! I tugged on the tongue as hard as I could. Help me! Two dark, uniformed police officers leaped in front of me. They had their nightsticks raised. With angry cries, they began pounding the throbbing creature. The nightsticks made a soft plopping sound with each hit. The blob monster uttered a sickening gurgle, and its tongue slid off my leg. Run! Get going! One of the officers screamed. My legs were shaking so hard I nearly fell. I could still feel the slimy, hot tongue on my leg. I stumbled back, and then gaped in horror as the blob monster pulled open its mouth. The fat purple tongue swung around both police officers. They beat it with their sticks. They shoved it. They tried to wrestle free. But the tongue tightened around them and pulled them into the huge open mouth of the creature's belly, pulled them both inside, and then the mouth slammed shut with a disgusting splat. No, no, I started wailing. I wanted to pound my fist against the monster, pound it until it melted to the ground. It's all my fault, I screamed. I wrote that scene with the policeman. It was all in the story I had just typed. I wrote that the blob monster ate them both, and now it had come true. My frightening story had come true, every scene of it. Blob monster uttered disgusting gulping sounds as it digested its human meal. Its tiny black eyes locked on mine as it gulped. What happens next? What happens next in my story? I asked myself. Trembling all over, my heart pounding, I struggled to think, what happens next? And then, with a shudder, I remembered what I had written. The blob monster follows me home. Chapter 28. The blob monster made a final gulp. Then it opened its mouth in a disgusting, gassy burp. Sickened by the sour odor, I staggered back. I've got to think of something, I told myself. I've got to stop this monster, or it will eat me next. The blob monster began to slide forward, plopping wetly on the sidewalk as it moved. I knew I couldn't stand there another second. I spun away and forced my rubbery legs to run. I picked up my bike off the street and jumped on. I began pedaling before I had my balance and nearly crashed into a brick wall. I struggled frantically to turn myself around, to calm down enough to ride. Finally, I pedaled away, groaning with each thrust of my foot. I sped out of town. Halfway down the next block, I glanced back. Yes, just as I had written, the Blob Monster was following me. Bouncing rapidly over the pavement, the purple veins on top of its head bouncing with it. Behind it, a trail of slime thickened on the street. It's so fast, it's keeping up with me, I realized. What happens next? What did I type next? Oh no, I shrieked when I remembered. This is the part where I fall off my bike. My front tire hit a rock. I screamed, and I went flying over the handlebars. Once again, I hit the pavement hard. Once again, I shoved my bike off me and jumped to my feet. I turned to see the Blob Monster catching up, plopping quickly up the street, its mouth gaping open, its tongue stretching, reaching out for me. I spun away and ran into Alex and Adam. "Run! Don't just stand there, it's catching up!" I screeched. "Zachy, are you okay?" Alex asked. "No time for questions," I gasped, shoving them both. "Run! The Blob Monster's real. I wrote it, and now it's doing everything I wrote." Adam laughed. He turned to the Blob Monster. "Do you think I'm stupid, Zachy? This is a joke, right? What is it, some kind of balloon?" "Adam, don't!" I cried. I grabbed for him and missed. He went running up to the Blob Monster. "Yeah, it's some kind of big balloon," Adam repeated, grinning. The monster's purple tongue slid quickly around Adam's waist. It pulled Adam easily into the open mouth, and then the Blob Monster swallowed him with a sickening "oh." Alex and I both screamed. Alex turned to me. "Did you write that?" she demanded in a trembling voice. I nodded. "Yeah, it's in my story," I confessed. Alex grabbed my shoulder. "Well, what happens next? Tell me, what comes next?" I don't know. That's where I stopped writing," I stammered. Chapter 29. Alex and I never ran so fast in our lives. By the time we reached my house, my head was throbbing and my side was aching. We both gasped for breath as I pushed open the front door. "Anyone home?" I shouted into the house. "Mom? Mom?" No reply. She must have gone out. I turned and glimpsed the Blob Monster bouncing hard over Alex's front yard. "No time," I cried to Alex. "No time, hurry." She slipped inside the house, and I slammed the door behind us and locked it. Then I lurched towards my room, holding my aching side, forcing my rubbery legs to move. I mopped the sweat off my forehead with my arm. Then I dropped into the desk chair and raised my hands over the typewriter keys. Alex hurried up beside me. "What are you going to do?" she asked breathlessly. "No time to explain," I choked out. I heard a thumping at the front door. Then I heard a loud crack, and I knew the huge pink blob had broken down the door. "No time, no time," I declared. I furiously started typing. "I'm typing an ending," I told Alex. "I'm going to type that the Blob Monster disappears, that it never existed, that Adam and the two policemen are okay." Squish, squish. Alex and I both gasped. We heard the Blob Monster's slimy body, so close now, moving quickly toward us through the hall. I knew I only had a few seconds to type the ending. Squish! Right outside my bedroom door. I held my breath and pounded the keys. I pounded them as hard and fast as I could until... No! "What's wrong?" Alex shrieked. "The keys are jammed." We both screamed again as the Blob Monster bounced into the room. Chapter 30. The blob monster's body heaved up and down. The creature panted, its entire body bouncing. White slime puddled on the floor around it. The slash of a mouth in the belly opened and closed, opened and closed. The purple tongue licked the mouth as the monster's eyes narrowed on me. Alex gasped and backed up against the wall. "Zachy, type the ending," she screamed breathlessly. "Make that thing disappear." "I can't," I cried. I frantically pulled at the keys. "They're jammed. I can't untangle them." "Zachy, please," Alex pleaded. And then I saw the fat purple tongue leap. It rolled out of the blob monster's open belly like a garden hose. "No!" I opened my mouth in a terrified wail as the tongue stretched across the room, reached for me. "No!" The tongue wrapped around the typewriter, lifted it easily. I grabbed for it with both hands and missed. My hands slid across the tongue, so hot, burning hot and sticky. The tongue pulled back, snapped back like an elastic, and carried the typewriter into the monster's gaping mouth. As I stared in horror, the blob monster swallowed the typewriter with a single whoop. I leaped up from the desk chair and stepped up beside Alex. We pressed our backs against the wall and watched helplessly as the blob monster throbbed and heaved, digesting the typewriter. "We're doomed," Alex murmured. "The typewriter, it's gone. Now there's no way you can destroy the monster." "Wait," I cried. "I have an idea." Chapter 31. I dove back to the desk. I searched the desktop. "What are you doing?" Alex cried. The blob monster let out a sick, gurgling sound as it digested the typewriter. Its body heaved up and down in the puddle of slime it had left on the rug. "The pen," I told Alex. "The pen." I pulled open the desk drawer and saw the old pen in front. I grabbed it and slammed the drawer shut. I held it up to show Alex. "The old pen the woman gave me. Maybe it has the same powers as the typewriter. Maybe I can write an ending with the pen and make the blob monster disappear." "Hurry," Alex warned. The blob monster had stopped its gurgling. The purple tongue came darting out again. I grabbed a sheet of paper and leaned over the desk. I pulled off the cap of the pen and lowered the point to the paper. I wrote one word and felt something hot and wet slap against the side of my face. The fat purple tongue slid against me. "Ow!" I cried out and dropped the pen. My hand shot up to my cheek and I felt hot, sticky slime. My stomach heaved. The tongue curled around the old pen and carried it to the blob monster's mouth. "No!" Alex and I shrieked together. The creature sucked the pen into its open belly and began its digesting gurgles. "Now what?" Alex asked. "What can we do? It's going to eat us next." I jumped to my feet. The desk chair toppled over. I stepped away from it, my eyes on the doorway. "Make a run for it," I cried. Alex held back. "We can't. That thing, it's blocking the way. We'll never get past it." She was right. The blob monster would stick out its tongue and pull us easily into its drooling mouth. "Try the window," I cried desperately. We both turned to the window. No way, it was bolted shut because of the air conditioner. "Doomed. Doomed," Alex began whispering. We both turned back to the throbbing pink monster. And then I had one more idea. "Alex, remember when Adam typed something on my story and it didn't come true?" She nodded, keeping her eyes on the gurgling blob monster. "Yes, I remember, but so what?" "Well," I continued, "maybe that's because it's me that has the power. Maybe the power isn't in the typewriter or the pen. Maybe I got the power that night in the antique shop when I was zapped by the electrical shock. Alex swallowed hard. Maybe it's been in me the whole time, I cried excitedly. All I have to do is think what I want to happen, and it will come true. I don't have to type it or write it. I just have to think it. Maybe, Alex repeated. She started to say something else, but the blob suddenly bounced forward, squishing over the rug, and its tongue rolled out towards us. Alex backed up against the wall. The fat tongue licked her arm. It left a thick smear of sticky drool on her skin. Think fast, Zachy, Alex cried. The tongue curled and started to wrap itself around Alex. Make it disappear, Alex pleaded. Think it away. I froze in horror as the fat tongue wrapped around Alex. It lifted her off the floor. Screaming, she thrashed her arms and kicked. Squirming frantically, she wrapped her hands around the sticky tongue and shoved with all her strength. But the disgusting tongue squeezed tighter, held her in its slimy grip. I shut my eyes. Think, I instructed myself. Think hard. Think that the blob monster is gone. 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 I held my breath and thought with all my might. Would it work? Chapter 32. The monster is gone. That's what I thought. The monster is gone. 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 I silently chanted the word over and over. Then I opened my eyes. And the blob monster was gone. Alex stood in the center of the floor, a dazed expression on her face. It worked, she choked out. I do have the power, I realized. I closed my eyes again and started to think. Adam is back, I thought. Adam is back. I opened my eyes, and Adam stood beside Alex. He blinked several times, then squinted at me. What's happening? He asked. I have it, I cried happily. I have the power, not the typewriter. What are you talking about? Adam demanded. What power? I shook my head. You wouldn't understand, I told him. Alex started to laugh. Before I realized it, I was laughing too. Joyful laughter, relieved laughter. All three of us stood there, laughing, laughing, laughing. Laughing happily ever after. Chapter 33. Well, did you like my story? The pink blob monster neatened the pages he had just read and set them down on the desk. He turned to his friend, a green-skinned blob monster. Did you just write that? The green monster asked. The pink blob monster gurgled with pride. Yeah, did you enjoy it? I did, his friend replied. Thank you for reading it to me. It's very exciting, very well written. What do you call it? I call it Attack of the Humans, the blob monster replied. Did you really like it? Yes, those humans are really gross. Do you know my favorite part? His friend replied. What part? When the blob monster ate Adam. That was really fun, the green creature declared. But I have just one problem with your story. The pink blob monster bobbed up and down. The veins on top of his head turned a darker purple. A problem with my story? What is it? Well, his green friend replied, why did you give it such an unhappy ending? I hated it when the human shut his eyes and the blob monster disappeared. That was so sad. Do you think so? The pink monster asked, gazing down thoughtfully at the pages he had written. Yeah, you should have had a happy ending instead. Everyone likes a happy ending, his friend replied. The pink blob monster picked up his story. Okay, you're right. I'll change the ending. I'll have the blob monster eat them all. Great! I love it! Now that's a great ending, his friend declared. Thank you for having listened to my audio telling of The Blob That Ate Everyone by R.L Stine. I hope you'll come by again for more stories soon.